everybody, welcome to the screencast for drawing exercise number 4. So this will continue on with 2D objects, and there are a lot of really fun tools in here for modifying shapes and combining shapes, and these tools will give you a lot of flexibility in the objects that you want to create. So first one we want to check is the 2D reshape tool. So you can either get to it in the basic tool palette, this tool here, or you can get to it by double clicking on any object. Notice when I double click, I get all of these points. I can then use the 2D reshape tool to stretch stuff around. So if I pick a corner point, I can alter the angle of the corner, and I can use the data display bar if I want to change the angle. And if I grab a handle on the side, I can stretch the shape that way. So got a lot of stuff you can do for dragging your shapes around. I'm in the first mode, which is the moved handles mode. The next mode is pretty cool. So remember when you're drawing polylines, you could create a Bezier control point or a cubic spline or a fillet. Well, here's a way to create an object and then go back and convert some of those points to those other styles. So you have to use the second object, and you could choose change vertex to a Bezier control point. So I move my cursor over the point, and I get a cursor shape that has a little cross in the middle and then two arrows kind of chasing each other in a circle. Click on that, and that changes that corner point, got to get the cursor shape, to a Bezier control point. If I want a cubic spline point, I can go back and change any of those points. It only works on the corners. Nothing happens if you go to a middle one, but any of the corners you can change. So this is a great way to change your shapes, and you can go back, and if you want to fillet, you can set the fillet radius. Let's set 4, and I can go back and change things. So this is a great way for making curves. You have a lot of control, and you can keep changing them until you like them. So convert some of the control points to Bezier control points. Again, you have to make sure you're in the second mode. Choose this option. Move them around. Change the vertices here to have a 4-inch fillet radius. So I would choose the 2D selection or reshape tool, or I could just double click, make sure I'm in the second mode, and I can set my preferences. I already got 4. Make sure I have this option. So there are a bunch of things you have to check up here, and then click away. Pretty cool. This is a great way for making moldings. Draw the moldings with hard corners, and then go ahead and make the curves that you want. The next tool is a magnificent tool. Use it all the time for 2D, and it works great for 3D. It is the split tool, which is this tool right here. Let me change my view to icons and text. Stretch this open. There are 2 main modes that you want to use. The second mode draws a cutting line right through your object. So wherever you draw a line, notice your object highlights in red. This is actually cut in 2. It looks like one object, but here what we do, deselect it, now select half. You've cut your object in 2. If I want to close it, I can do that from the Object Info palette. If I want to close both of them, I can select them both and close them. So that's a great way. If I want to create 2 semicircles, open and close, let's see if we can close these. You can't close every tool, but I'll cut through there. Nope, I don't have an option for closing a circle. But here's a great way about making an arc. The next mode of the tool is also great. You can trim by line. So it's a 3-part stage. You click once to start the line, click again to set the line, and now if I move my cursor, it looks like a little finger on this side. This is the side of the line that'll stay. If I move over here, notice the arrow flips. These are the lines that are going to stay. So you point to the side that you want to keep, and you trim everything. This is so useful for cutting stuff down. let me do a quick array. Say I've made these objects here and I want to shrink them by a little bit. I'll go back to I could highlight them all and change their shape with using the object info palette. You know, if I wanted to change the height, I could reduce them to 14 and everybody would shrink a little bit. If I wanted to do it more freehand, I could grab my split tool, make sure I'm in the third mode there, draw my split line. I could do it at any angle. I'll choose to keep those. And then while they're all selected, I can find my object info palette. Maybe I turned it off by accident. Windows palette. Yep, I did. Close them all. Deselect them. And I have my objects. So this is a magnificent tool. You can also use it for tapers if you're making table legs. Grab the split tool. Wherever I put it. Now, did I close the basic? No, here we go. I'm losing things today. Grab the split tool and you got to make sure you go all the way through the object. And I can close it and very quickly you have a tapered table leg. I can use some smart points on my object. I could use snap to distance. If I wanted my taper to start a quarter of the way up from the bottom, I could start there and then taper down and then close it pretty fast. So this is a great tool and we'll use it a lot when we get to 3D objects as well. So if we want to split this object in half down here, finishing the page, draw a line, choose to keep the top, close it, and we're good to go. Trim tool. The trim tool looks like this little scissors in a hand. And this allows you to trim intersecting lines. So notice any little line that overhangs, I can just trim off that tail of a line. And it's a little fussy. Some lines you can trim. Sometimes you got to make sure you touch up the right spot just to trim it. Sometimes you delete the whole thing. So that's a pretty handy thing. I can trim the parts that are inside, anything that intersects. So that's a fun way to create objects and to kind of clean up objects. So if I wanted to create these lines in a circle, right, I could draw a line, and then create a duplicate array or move by points. I'm going to use move by points. And then I could, delete the objects I don't want, and then I could come clean them up using the trim tool. Pretty fast. Rather than trying to draw individual lines to get them to fit into my circle. It's a pretty fast way to go. Fillet tool. So think of a fillet as a round over bit or a radius bit. So you grab the fillet tool, you set the fillet radius. So the first one says 3 inches, so we'll set 3. And then you click on one side of the corner and the other side of the corner. One side of the corner, other side of the corner. One side of the corner, other side of the corner. So when I'm looking at this object, I'm not looking at lines and arcs and stuff. I'm looking at a rectangle that I then have rounded off the edges, much the way you would with a block of wood. You take a board of wood and then you'd run it through the router or through a shaper with a roundover bit and cut off those corners. So we want to do 2 inches for here, so we reset our preferences to 2. And choose our sides. We can do a 1/2 inch, fill it up here. Again, we go choose the fillet tool, change this to 1/2 inch. And we just want to do on the top side of the table. So I'll choose this point and that point, this point and that point. And we want a 1/4 inch fillet on the bottom of the table leg. Go reset our preferences. Changing our bit here, we're just putting in a smaller radius. And 1/4 inch is pretty small. So if we zoom in, you may not be able to see it on your screen. The radius is there. It's just too small to show up when you're looking at it full.